friends, welcome to Taranayas. Today we will be discussing editorials from The Hindu and Indian Express of 18th of October 2022. The topic is cybersecurity. You can relate this topic with internal security, cybersecurity in specifically. And this article has been taken from The Hindu, titled Today's Weapon of Choice and Its Expanding Dimension. The article has been written by M K Narayan. And the writer talks about the expanding dimension of the cyberspace and how it threatens the internal security of India and how it has been overlooked by the policy makers. So the writer presents the challenges of the 21st century. The first that he talks about is that how the cyber threat is a hydra-headed monster, and it is the most challenging when it comes to the civilian domain. So far, the attention paid by the policymakers or the cyber intelligence has been restricted to the national security dimension. However, the civilian dimension has been overlooked, and we will see that how the writer brings our attention to this dimension of the cyberspace. The first that he talks about is that it is a serious threat and it has the cascading effect, and he talks about that how the threat is encompassing in all nature and is not given due attention because the world is awash with the AI driven military innovations which has specifically been seen in the Russia-Ukraine war, and how the potential crisis hot zone have been given over importance, and how the gray zone hotspot has not been given its due importance. The writer points towards the hybrid warfare which results into weaponization of everything. Alright, so now let's see what the writer says. The writer talks about that the present demand of the cyber security is proto-revolutionary. Alright, the proto-revolutionary, and he talks about the gray zone operation. Now let us first understand what this gray zone operation is. Basically, the gray zone is described as a cyberspace in which is in between the peace and war, in which the state and the non-state actor engages. Alright, so that means the state actors are there and non-state actors are there. Now let's look at the example in order to understand the gray zone warfare. The writer has given example of the JEE, which is the Joint Entrance Examination. Now, in order to threaten the national security of a country, this entrance examination can also be a space of conflict. That means hacking. That means hacking of the system which is conducting this examination, and which would then result into decline of the prestige of the nation. So this is what the gray zone operation of cyber security is. Alright, now writer says that since it falls outside the traditional sphere of conflict, and many of the non-state actors have already been beginning to employ and undermine the vitals of the convergence of the emerging technologies alongside the usage of the hybrid technology, which poses several challenges to the nation and the institutions. This is one example which the writer has given. There could be many more examples. Now let's see what this cyberspace is. Now if I talk about cyberspace, then basically it is a subset of the interconnected communication technology, hardware, software processes, services, data and system. That means cyberspace is basically everything that is interconnected with the computers and that is interconnected with the data processing, with the software processing, etc., and the communication technology. Now the writer says that cyberspace is the critical aspect of the national power. The cyber threat is all pervading, embracing many of the regions, and it operates on the different planes. Now let's talk about the warfare. Okay, now earlier when we look at this conventional warfare, so we had this combat warfare, we had the arms and ammunitions warfare like we saw in World War I and the World War II, and also during the Bangladesh Liberation War, the Kargil War, etc. These are the conventional methods of warfare. The scenario has changed in the 21st century, and it will change even more in the coming centuries. Warfare has now been shifted to the data or informational warfare. That is why it is said that the cyber conflict or the cyber security has become the fifth domain of the warfare. There is another domain of the warfare that is counted amongst the bioweapon. But informational warfare is another tactical and strategic way to counter one's enemies. Now let's look at the hybrid warfare. What is this hybrid warfare? The hybrid warfare implies both the tactics, the conventional warfare tactics, but in slow mode, not as high as it was seen during the World War I or World War II. And the another is the information. For example, the WHO says that it is not pandemic. With respect to the COVID-19, the WHO said it is not pandemic, but it is infodemic. That means the spread of wrong information, false information, or uncredited information has become another challenge to the national security. And this is what the writer is suggesting, that there is a gray zone operation area in which the conflict can exist, and due to the rising hybrid warfare. Now let me give you example that how China engages with its enemy. The first thing, that it does engage in the conventional warfare, but in a low mode. For example, we had seen the Galwan Valley clash, we had seen the Doklam clash. However, it also engages in the informational warfare. It tends to undermine the cyber security of its opponents. For example, we had the Stuxnet attack on many, and we had this attack by D-Track. Alright, so the responsibility was somehow being pointed towards China. So this is what is known as the hybrid warfare. So therefore, writer talks about that the cyberspace is encompassing and it is expanding rapidly. So it does not only include the national security or the critical assets of the country, but it is also expanding towards the civilian domain. For example, the social media. Now let's look at that how social media can undermine the national security. There is not a very big example when it comes to India. Perhaps I would be taking example from Myanmar. So let's take example of Myanmar. Now Myanmar, many of the non-state actors used the Facebook for its own strategic purpose, to have an attack or cultural attack on the Rohingyas Muslims. And the situation started to worsen so much that these people from the Rakhine state had to migrate to other states such as Bangladesh and India. So this is also an informational warfare, right? Wrong information are spread about a particular community, or which poses another challenge, right? So this is how the cyber warfare is ramifying itself in the civilian domain, especially the social media. And in this world of information and data, a lot of content is being overloaded. A single individual is being overloaded with so much of information that it has somehow reduced its capacity to process that information and look for its authenticity and credibility. Therefore, this has become a critical challenge for the national security, because national security is just not about securing the border, it is also about securing the peace and harmony within the communities. That is the reason why the writer points towards the civilian domain as a warfare domain in the coming years. Alright, so therefore the writer says that in order to deal with the cyber threat which is posed in the civilian domain, we would require a versatile and imaginative thinking. and there is a need to erect a proper defense against the gray zone attack. Like I gave the example of the joint entrance examination. I mean, the writer has given this examination, this example. Now let's talk about the challenges which are posed by technology. We know that technology does aid human, it is supplementary in nature, it has made our work easy. However, there are different sets of challenges that the technology poses, and one such challenge is the cyber security. And the cyber attack on national assets and infrastructure are becoming more aggravated in the coming years. Let me take example of the Pegasus. We will not go into the detail that of the controversy regarding the Pegasus, but let us take the example of the Pegasus, that how it was used to undermine the privacy of some of the Indians. And we know that privacy is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. Therefore, the technology has significantly raised the bar as far as the intensity and the scale of the cyber attack on the national assets and infrastructures are concerned. Alright, so the writer says that we would be requiring niche solution. What do we mean by the niche solution? Niche solution means that specific solutions would be required for a specific issue or a specific problem, so that the cyber intrusion are reduced in the civilian domain. And it is important that those concerned undertake a leap of faith to install such solutions before the situation goes out of control. Now let's see that how the cyberspace is a battle and it is a dilemma. The space is a geopolitical locus of conflict and support. Now the state actors would utilize the cyberspace. They would utilize the cyberspace for two purposes. Either they would support their alliance, or they would be working against their adversaries. Alright, either they would be supporting their alliance, or they would be working against their adversaries. Therefore, the cyberspace has become a new dimension to the ongoing conflict and the geopolitical order. Additionally, the writer says that the distortion by the private players of the concept of the information superhighway, it casts a dark shadow over the entire current system of belief, provides a great deal of fuel for thought, more specifically when influences turn out to be fake or distorted. Now, let's take the example of this Cambridge Analytica case. Now, what happened? This Cambridge Analytica, which is located in UK, it was accused that it had used the Facebook data of the US citizen in order to influence the elections. So this is what is called as the gray zone warfare. That means the data of the civilians are being misused in order to achieve the national interest by the adversaries. All right. So writer says that the non-state actors are engaging in hybrid warfare, and they distort the day-to-day practices, including the examination. All right. Now, if I consider the scenario of India, then you look at the condition of India. At present, India does not have any data protection law. After Justice B.N. Sri Krishnan committee, the data protection bill has not been discussed in the parliament. Alright, so India lacks any robust data protection measure. So when we speak of the gray zone warfare, gray zone warfare, then India is vulnerable. India is vulnerable. All right. So therefore, the writer points towards. So if I am to conclude this article and brings a few important or specific point from this article, then the first point would be the depth of the cyber attack that may increase in the future, and the second, the writer points towards the increasing defense structure against the gray zone attack, and the writer points towards that how the cyberspace would then be utilized in order to achieve the objective by the adversaries. All right. So if we want to prevent anarchy and chaos, then we must erect robust infrastructure so as to protect our civilian domain as well. All right. So this was it for this article. Thank you very much.